something. Okay. All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the YSU Alumni Lecture Series. My name is Brendan McAvoy. I am a junior music composition student here at the Dana School of Music at YSU, and I will be the moderator this evening. Tonight, we are going to be talking about the Muse series, a performing arts series being hosted by the McDonough Museum of Art, and I am joined by Claudia Berlinski and Dr. Kivikan Lipman. Claudia Berlinski has been teaching art at YSU for 20 years, where she has served as the Foundation's program coordinator and assistant to the chair in the Department of Art. She is also the director of the John J. McDonough Museum of Art on campus. She exhibits nationally and regionally, contributes to print portfolio exchanges, and curates and educates group exhibitions. Her work is included in collections across the nation. Dr. Kivikan Lipman holds degrees from Oberlin, Juilliard, and the University of Cincinnati. Praised in the New York Times for his versatility, he is the founding cellist of the International Contemporary Ensemble, as well as founder and lyricist of the Baroque String Group, acronym, and gambist with the Viol Consort Lestrange. Kivi appears on more than 50 recordings with many record labels, and a recent review in the New York Times notes that his long, flowing hair often covers his face as he plays. Seriously, the New York Times printed that. All right, welcome to both of you. How are you both doing tonight?
Great.
Great. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for being here. Well, first, I'd love to start with a clip from the most recent performance in the Muse series, featuring the Dana Piano Trio, which consists of Dr. Con Lipman on cello, Dr. Cecilia Yuda on piano, and Dr. Wendy Case on violin. And this clip from their recent performance back on August 30th of this year is a clip from the piece by Arvo Pärt called Mozart Adagio, and it's a reimagining of one of Mozart's slower movements for one of his famous works. All right, that video was a little bit laggy, so maybe we can see after we stream, see if we can include the links to each one of these clips in the video description, so that way you can listen to it afterwards.
Yeah,
Alrighty.
absolutely.
Sounds good. All right, well, Claudia, let's start with you. Let's talk a little bit about the Muse series. What is it? Where does it take place? And why did you want to start this series?
Well, so we describe the Muse series as featuring innovative expressions of contemporary culture, serving to enrich Northeast Ohio with recitals of groundbreaking new music and dynamic collaborations. So we have the recitals take place at the McDonough Museum of Art, and it is a partnership between the Dana School of Music and the McDonough Museum of Art. Since we're really part of the same college, the Cliff College, there was sort of this desire to create more partnerships than there already are within the college. There's certainly the partnership between Dana School of Music and theater department, and theater and dance are one. And so we thought, we have this space, could we have musical performances in there? And it turns out that when I reached out to Dana School of Music, that there were a number of eager people, performers, who were looking for a new space to perform in. And so we decided to create this series. And really the Dana School of Music kind of takes a lead in finding the performers, putting together the recitals, and we provide the space. We provide the space and great art, so that was one of the reasons that we thought it would be a really good partnership, because a lot of the music recitals deal with contemporary music, although there is some um, historical classical music as well. And we're a contemporary art center. And so what a better combination than to, have something to look at while you're listening. So there were things to work out, but it's really coming along, and we've had 3 or 4 performances in the series so far, and so we're really just at the beginning of this project,
That's
which has a
wonderful.
lot of potential, I think.
Yeah, I agree. So I know you said Dana is up. You leave it up to Dana for the most part to determine who you want to perform. So, Kivi, how do you decide which performances to include in such a dynamic series like this?
We've been focused so far on classical contemporary music, on bringing new works of music to the museum while it's displaying new works of art. But we're open to really all kinds of music. It's such a beautiful acoustic to play in. It's such a beautiful room to play in. That right now it's whatever is available, whatever Dana is producing, faculty, students, guest artists, it's all open to become part of the Muse series.
That's wonderful. Yeah. I know we had another clip. Speaking of faculty artists, we did have a clip of Dr. Catherine Umbel, accompanied by Anthony Ruggiero from a recital that she held as part of the Muse series. I don't know if maybe you think it would be best just to include the link so that way we don't have to worry about the sharing that video. I don't know.
So should I try to share it, or was it really bad, the first one?
I don't think it came through that. I don't think it does it justice when we share it.
Okay.
So
Okay.
we'll include the links afterwards. But she plays the clip is a selection from a piece called Sweet Florentine by Charles Marie Widor. And this was from her recital that she held as part of the Muse series on January 25th of this year. Um, so Kitty, you
So can
mentioned,
I just interject something?
yeah,
So with Catherine's performance, we had an installation, a sculptural installation in that particular gallery. So that wasn't just a freestanding sculpture here or there, but it was this thing, many things that hung from the ceiling and were kind of moving around like mobiles in the middle of the space, and actually even around the periphery a little bit. And so when I think that the she and Anthony were both a little surprised when they came into the space. But Anthony was so enthusiastic about it. He really won Catherine's heart over, and it was really, I think, dynamic because, with the airflow, the mobiles were kind of moving around slowly, and Catherine and Anthony were really kind of part of the installation. And so so I thought it was kind of great to have that, not just art hanging on the walls, but sort of this collaboration literally between the art and the performers.
sort of just all in one syncretic experience
Yeah, yeah.
recital. That's
You can
wonderful.
you can see it a little bit in the videos, of course, the little clip.
That's wonderful. Yeah, I'll be sure to take another look at that. Um, so, Kivi, you mentioned before that you try to focus on contemporary classical music. So, what exactly is that genre? Could you kind of give a little more of a description? How would you
Yeah,
define that?
it's a great question, and it's a term that doesn't have a really clear definition. It's sort of been morphing. But if we were to sort of create a somewhat subjective binary between art music and pop music, and then another one between recent music and music of the past, and then another one between music written for classical acoustic instruments and other instruments. Classical contemporary music is simply art music that's been written recently for classical instruments. And that there's a wide variety of styles and sounds that can entail. But all of that sort of can be wrapped up and described as classical contemporary music.
Yeah. When you say recent, I mean, I know we're making subjective binaries here, but when you say recent, like you're talking like maybe the last 40 years, last 30 years? How?
It's funny. It depends on who you're talking to. You can look at you can look at some audition lists for professional auditions, and they'll say a contemporary piece written since 1900 or since 1945, which by, obviously that's not contemporary, but that still feels contemporary to a lot of audience members, and even to a lot of professional classical musicians who don't play a lot of music from the 20th century, let alone the 21st century. When I think of contemporary music, I'm usually thinking of 21st century music, the last 15 to 20 years.
Okay. You mentioned that musicians and audiences don't necessarily have this sort of, there's a bit of a disconnect. They view it like anything within the last century or so as contemporary. Do you think that there are other like preconceived notions that audiences or even other performers of music have with this sort of, with this genre?
Yeah, I think audiences, when they think classical music, they think something beautiful and old-fashioned. They think Mozart and Beethoven, and there's such a wide variety of styles that make up classical contemporary, and some of it does sound like that. You get beautiful melodies and harmonies, and a lot of it doesn't. We've got noise music, we've got music that's been randomized. There's there's so much going on uh, within classical contemporary music, and I think audiences are sometimes not expecting, not prepared for what they're going to hear, and that's been the case for a long time. It's been inaccessible, I think, to a lot of audiences, um, going back 100 years, when composers who are long dead were the contemporary composers.
Yeah. So even though not all audiences, have the chance to interact with it a lot, you, on the other hand, have definitely been immersed in this sort of culture. So what have your
Yeah.
experiences been um, with this genre of music and this style?
So like most people, like most musicians, I grew up, happily ignorant that any such thing existed. I was training to be a professional classical musician, and I thought Stravinsky and Prokofiev, who are early 20th century composers writing in a really old-fashioned style, I thought they were way out there. I didn't realize there was anything more modern than that. I basically didn't know that there were living classical composers of art music. Um, and then I went to college and I met a bunch of them. Composition majors at Oberlin became most of my best friends in college, and I became their pet cellist. So I spent most of my 20s really sort of specializing in this kind of music. And a lot of my most profound experiences as a performer have been when I've been able to work with composers, and help them create and shape the piece. And this was a lot of what I was doing in New York before I got this job and moved to Youngstown. And I teach at a festival every summer in Tuscany that's focused on classical contemporary music. There's several faculty composers. One of them, Forrest Pierce, who's a dear friend of mine, teaches at University of Kansas at Lawrence. I was able to bring him to Youngstown for a concert on the Muse series last November or December.
I think you're right. I think we do have a clip of one of the pieces that we played on his recital. Tell us a little more about it. The All Night Vigil, a piece for
Yes.
solo cello and women's choir. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, the piece is called The All-Night Vigil of Rabia al-Adawiyya. I think I'm probably butchering the pronunciation of her name, and I apologize for that.
Better
She
than
was
I would.
an 8th century Sufi mystic, in what's modern day Iraq. And she would have these all-night vigils on her rooftop and record the visions that she had. And there's a modern translation, I think also by someone who teaches at University of Kansas and a friend of the composer Forrest Pierce. And together they created this work that's 13 visions of Rabia. And the cello sort of holds everything together. And this women's choir sings each of the visions, sometimes with solos, sometimes homophonically as a unit. It's a really beautiful piece.
That's wonderful.
And I think we have an excerpt of it. I have no idea if it will how it's going to sound if you try playing it. I don't know if it's worth doing that.
I can try it if you want me to, but it'll probably be the same quality as the original one.
Yeah, we're not having great luck over WebEx tonight.
Yeah, it really was quite beautiful with the voice, the choir.
Yeah.
So.
Well, we can share a link. It sounds like in the chat after.
Definitely,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So just to give some more information, it's Forrest Pierce's piece called The All Night Vigil, and it was performed as part of the Muse series on December 1st of 2019, featuring Dr. Conlippin on cello and a women's choir comprised of Dana vocal students and a couple professors, and it was conducted by Anna Mirko as part of the series. So outside of pieces like that, where you've gotten to collaborate with composers in that sort of, intimate, like really friendship kind of sense, what other pieces have you played or participated in that have kind of impacted you the most?
I guess the pieces that have impacted me the most, it's changed a lot over time. I used to get most excited by works that they're sort of now broadly classified as the post-war avant-garde. And these are the great composers of really the late 1940s through the 80s or 90s. And some of you who are watching this might know some of these names, even if you're not really familiar with this music. Pierre Boulez became a very well-known conductor, but he was a composer and first, sort of one of the original bad boys of classical contemporary music. Yannis Xenakis is a Greek composer who studied with Messiaen in France, but is actually, in many circles, better known as an architect. He was Corbusier's assistant and actually claimed that most of Corbusier's ideas were his. György Ligeti, who, if you've seen 2001: A Space Odyssey, he wrote a lot of the most famous music to that. Although he didn't write it for the film, he wrote it as concert pieces, and then Kubrick grabbed the music for the film, and Ligeti didn't even know that it was going to be used in the film until he went to the theater and saw it. Anyway, I loved those guys, and those were my biggest influences when I was a student. They're all dead white European men now, and their styles really kind of old-fashioned compared to what's happening in the music scene today. So I've got a bunch of new favorites from the last 10, 20 years. One of my favorite composers who I've gotten to work with, Caroline Shaw, wrote a piece called Partita for 8 voices that won a Pulitzer a few years back. If you've seen the German sci-fi show Dark on Netflix, that's featured prominently in it. Kaija Saariaho is a Finnish composer. Her opera La Mort de Loen was played at the Met a year or two ago. I think it's the most sumptuous thing ever written. I love it. There's an American composer, Kate Soper, who wrote a piece called Voices from the Killing Jar, which really blows me away. There's a lot of great contemporary classical music being written right now.
That's wonderful. So why do you think it's important for audiences to listen to more of this and to kind of support it through series like the Muse series?
Well, there was a study done pretty recently by the League of American Orchestras, which is an organization of about 60 of the most prominent American symphony orchestras. And they were looking at what pieces were getting performed, what composers were getting performed. And they found that of the 2,700 something pieces performed by major orchestras that year, or of the 2,700 something performances that year, only 75 included any classical contemporary music. It was like I think it was 2.9%. And the result when that happens, when all the major symphony orchestras are basically ignoring music of the last several generations, is that classical music sort of gets relegated to it's the most old-fashioned museum possible, and even worse because up until the most recent generation or two, there were no non-white composers. There were almost no women composers. It means that classical music it's become a celebration of dead white guys, and it's a problem. And the Muse series and other organizations that are focused on classical contemporary music are doing what we can to correct this and to showcase other voices. I think also it's really important as a human to be challenged by the unfamiliar, and hearing music in a style that you've never heard is one way to do that. And even if you leave hating it, you've gained something from the experience, and hopefully you won't hate it.
Hopefully. Claudia, what do you think? What can there be gained by attending series like the Muse series where they combine contemporary classical music with contemporary art? What is there for people to gain from,
Well,
experiencing different, more modern, I should say, pieces of art?
I think it helps to foster or continues to foster the relationship between the visual arts and the musical arts. And, at the museum, we're trying to develop all kinds of programming to bridge the different art disciplines and to help really make that connection for people who tend to, categorize those and separate them. And I think that people who are interested in the McDonough Museum may come to a performance, do series performance, or another musical performance here just because they are patrons of the museum. And vice versa. There may be people who are really interested in the Dana School of Music and music in general, classical music, and it may be their first time in the museum here or their second time. And so it really helps to build audiences for both of our disciplines, and I think that it provides for the community, um, this, I don't want to say a more casual experience, but you're not going to a place like Stambaugh Auditorium, for example, or the Dior Center to see an orchestral performance, but you're in, an art gallery. And I think it creates a different sort of experience, when the lights aren't dimmed and you can see what's going on around you and look at the art while you're listening to music. And I think that that's a unique experience in this area in particular for the community.
Definitely. And I can even say from my own experience, participating in student composition recitals that aren't even a part of this Muse series, but have still taken place in the McDonough Gallery. It's such a wonderful, unique experience. Like you said, to play somewhere where the lights aren't dimmed and like the audience and the performers are so close to each other instead of
Right.
separated by this stage and, you know, physical distance and everything. And but instead in the McDonough, they're right up close and you can almost see the sheet music. So it's a really fascinating experience, I think. And like you said, to be surrounded by art at the same time, it's just this multifaceted experience of contemporary culture that it's hard to find in other places like concert halls, I think.
Yeah, and when Forrest Pierce performance was going on, we had the BFA exhibition, which is the culminating exhibition for the art students who are graduating. And so, I think that's a special experience too, to have the student work showcased and have people come in and see that who may not have otherwise come in. And to see, we had the choir standing in front of this huge 20-foot wall of like double-decker 5-foot paintings that were done by a student. It was quite lovely.
Yeah, wonderful. So what do you foresee in the future, both short term and long term, for this Muse series? What do you want the series to become? I know you said it's still kind of new. We've only had a couple performances so far, but what are some goals that we have for gaining more audiences or future collaborations that we'd love to see? What are some ideas that we have?
Well, we'd love to have Kivi's ensemble play here, right? Wouldn't we? I mean, I
Really
know
fun.
he's performed, with, Forrest and with the Dana Piano Trio, but with his other outside um, ensembles.
Be great. Right now, we're in such a difficult place because, of course, COVID is canceling basically all live indoor performances for audiences, and we can't bring in guest artists this school year. So the Muse series is really relying on faculty performances, which are going to be live streamed. And on October 14th, the Dana Piano Trio will perform a piece by Kaija Saariaho, the Finnish composer I mentioned earlier, one of my favorites. And we're going to also include a piece by Beethoven to celebrate his 250th anniversary year. And later on the school year, we'll be back with other colleagues. And there'll be a concert at the end of the semester of Dana student composers. Our dean had a vision for the Muse series, which is that we'd be commissioning site-specific music that would ideally be created in collaboration with the visual artists whose works would be on display. And I think that's going to be an amazing experience for audience members once we're able to realize this. It might be a couple of years down the road, but that's an important goal, I think, for the series.
Right. I'm glad you brought that up because I was thinking about that as well. Yeah, so that I think that will probably be a few years down the road, but yeah, so and that will take, once we are able to find people who are able to work together, that will then take some time for them to create the visual art and the music. And so that could take on several different forms. There could be, artwork that was already created that inspires the music, or vice versa, or they could collaborate, as a team and create both simultaneously, and then it would become an installation in the museum where the recorded music would be played, inside of the art. And so, yeah, that's very exciting.
That's wonderful. So, Kivi, you mentioned there were some upcoming performances. You said the Dana Piano Trio will be on October 14th. Are there any other live streaming events that we have scheduled?
Right now, there's nothing currently scheduled for the Muse series past October 14th. We're playing things a little bit by ear. We're just because of there's so much influx.
Mm-hmm.
We're trying to avoid scheduling something and then have to cancel it. But we'll let our audiences know a couple months out when we've got something that's going to happen for sure. And we'll try to schedule these every couple months and expose as many people as possible to different styles of music that they might never have heard before.
Yeah, wonderful.
So it's pre-recorded. I just wanted to clarify that. So live streaming, as you can tell, can be difficult. So we are pre-recording these. And in addition to the Muse series, we are having an alumni recital series and the student honors recital series. So almost every week we'll be in the museum recording some sort of musical performance that will then be found on the McDonough YouTube channel, on the Cliff College YouTube channel. So we have premiere dates set up for those, and you can find that on the McDonough website. You can find information on the Facebook page, and there will be events created that will be shared across, the Cliff College Facebook, McDonough Facebook, and the Dana School of Music Facebook, if you're interested in that. It's, as there's 9 in total, I think, of those performances.
Wonderful.
Oh, and let's not forget the composition class again. That was so fun last semester because the music, it was so varied, and one ensemble would come up and play something very folksy, and another one would come up and be more like contemporary classic, and it was wonderful.
The variety of music being created today, even within the classical contemporary music, just within art music written for classical instruments, it's so there's just so much different stuff going on. We have a lot of isms in classical music, just like in the modern art world. Some of the same isms they correlate, like abstract expressionism, serialism, and minimalism. And we've got some of our own, like spectralism, that there's no art equivalent of that, I don't think. And then we've got composers who are writing in styles of 100 years ago, like Schoenberg, or 200 years ago, like Beethoven or Schubert. It's really exciting how much stylistic variety there is.
For sure, for sure. All right. Well, I think we've reached the point in our discussion where we're open to taking any questions from our viewing audience for live streams. I see we have one already in our chat from Matt on Facebook. Could you list some of your contemporary classical favorites? The ones you mentioned sound so intriguing. Um, so I don't know, Kivi, are there any other specific pieces that you'd love to mention, or Claudia afterwards, if you have any favorites of your own that you've listened to?
Sure. So I mentioned a few already. The first one that comes to mind, just because I listened to it again fairly recently, and it's always just so much fun. An Italian composer named Fausto Romatelli wrote a piece called Professor Bad Trip, and it's I can't really describe what it sounds like. It's way out there. It's sort of like electroacoustic acid spectralism. I just made up a thing.
From what I've heard of it, that seems to come pretty close.
It's really cool. You can go on YouTube and you'll see you'll see a set of recordings. Professor Bad Trip Lessons 1, 2, and 3. The recording by Ictus is really amazing. I had a class listen to that last semester once we went online. Some of them really hated it.
I do remember that there were some people who were not as keen to it. But I mean, that's the thing. Like you said, there are so many different styles that there really is something for everyone.
The more avant-garde this music gets, the fewer people I think it might appeal to. It's like anything it's like avant-garde film or avant-garde food. The wackier something is, the fewer people will appreciate it. You have to be the sort of person who seeks out avant-garde things, and classical contemporary music can get really out there. A lot of strange noises that that most people don't think of as music, and we sometimes get reactions like, "This is ugly," and sometimes it is very deliberately, or "This is random," which sometimes it is very deliberately, or "My kid could write that," which he couldn't. Your kid couldn't write that. Sorry.
Well, that's across the board for all kinds of art, isn't that true? Yeah. So, and sometimes art cannot be beautiful. Art has to be ugly. You know, it's a reflection of our time quite often. So, so that's an experience in and of itself. So, so Kivi, do you think it is a bad idea to do some live music because of the?
I think if we're trying to play the clip that's already been I could try, but I don't think it's going to work based on that little experience that we had so far of just playing that clip.
Okay.
Yeah, WebEx is not. We're not necessarily on a system that's well designed for live music. I'm happy to try, but I think I might just point our viewers to recordings that we already have on YouTube.
So, I guess I could probably share the link for the full performance of the Dana piano trio from last week as well. I shared the links for the clips, the very short clips that I had, and those will be posted on Facebook. But yeah, so the performance we had last week, fully masked, was amazing. It was just so beautiful, and so happy to host it. And
that performance included one of my favorites too, even though it's not a contemporary one. The Clara Schumann piano trio is one that I really enjoy. But some of my other, kind of to spin off Matt's question from earlier, some of my classical favorites that were written more recently. Kivi mentioned the name of Carolyn Shaw. Her string quartet is one of my absolute favorite string quartets. I have yet to play in it. I would like to someday, but maybe someday. But I really enjoy listening to it. Another composer that's doing great things even right now is Jennifer Higdon. And you might have even heard of the piece Blue Cathedral. It has been, I believe, that piece won a Pulitzer Prize. Am I right?
That's right. I'm not positive.
Regardless, it's still one of the most widely performed, I think, contemporary orchestral pieces. making kind of like the circuit right now. And then also her violin concerto. I know Hilary Hahn made a wonderful recording of that, and that's one of my favorite, more modern pieces. But yeah, all right. Kimberly Chapman says hi on Facebook. Hi, Kimberly. Thank you for tuning in. Um, all right. Well, if there aren't any other questions from any of our viewers tuning in, is there anything else that either of you would like to say?
Just, the museum is open for visitors to come in and see the exhibitions with safety protocols in place. But all of our programming, let's just say all of our programming, is virtual currently. So there will be, as we mentioned, a number of musical performances premiering on YouTube throughout the semester. And, we came back and put these together in a hurry because, we came back in a hurry after being away from school for months. And so hopefully we can do some planning for next semester to do some more musical performances, although we always have to wait and see what this COVID situation will bring and whether we'll be able to have live performances or if we'll be continuing them virtually. And so just keep checking in with us to see what's going on, and we'll make sure we get it out there, whether it's on our website or on our social media platforms.
Kivi, anything in closing?
I just want to encourage everyone who's watching to explore strange new sounds that you've never heard before. It can be really fun.
All right. Well, everyone who's tuned in, thank you so much for joining us for this session of the YSU Alumni Lecture Series. Special thanks again to Claudia Berlinski and Dr. Kivi Kahn-Lippmann for joining us. Also, thank you to Heather Belgian, the Associate Director for Alumni Engagement, who helps us get all of these lecture series together. And thank you to Sharon Zembauer for being wonderful tech support this evening and helping get our live stream on the air. Be sure to tune in next week for the Alumni Lecture Series for Dr. Joe Alessi, a YSU alumnus from both 1990 and 1999, and he will be discussing the first rule of leadership. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a wonderful evening and stay healthy.
Thank you, Brendan.